You know the story. A curious girl follows a white rabbit down a hole, meets a mad tea party, a grinning cat, and a queen who shouts, "Off with their heads." It reads like a child's frolic, a Victorian fairy tale turned cartoon. But the book you think you know is a mirror held up to the darkest corners of 19th century Britain. What looks like whimsy is coded protest, and what looks like nonsense is a ledger of real suffering. Picture a summer afternoon on July 4th, 1862. The River Isis runs slow beneath willows. A man you know as Lewis Carroll, Charles Lutwidge Dodgson, rows 3 little children and tells them a story. You can hear the slap of oars, the soft croak of insects, the damp scent of the riverweed. He spins a tale that will later become Alice, and 2 years later, on November 26, 1864, he gifts the original manuscript, Alice's Adventures Underground, to Alice Little. That cozy scene is the public face, but immediately beneath it are noises the picture hides. Factory whistles, drowning children, the creak of gallows. Read the book against the grain, and the innocent images begin to stain. Take the white rabbit, the anxious creature forever checking a pocket watch. People laugh and call it a joke about timidity and haste. But the rabbit is the rail timetable and the factory foreman's whistle. Picture Manchester in 1830, steam belching. George Stephenson's Liverpool and Manchester Railway opens, and schedules begin to govern human life. Railway time forces regimentation. The factory bell makes childhood into labor. Huskar Pit, Silkstone, July 4th, 1838. Coal-black water floods a mine. 26 children drown. The inquest records from 1838 describe little bodies in their working clothes, parents who could not raise them, and public outrage that eventually compels Parliament to act. When the White Rabbit panics about being late, he is not merely comic. He is the punctuality that turned children into clockwork. Then there is the Mad Hatter. You smile, you imagine a quirky host, but the phrase "mad as a hatter" comes from a dirty, unmistakable reality. Mercury nitrate used in hat felting causes tremors, hallucinations, and decay. Walk the alleys of Stockport or Denton in the early 19th century and breathe the coppery metallic tang in the air. Watch men whose hands shake like autumn leaves. Parliamentary reports and medical treatises of the mid-1800s document erethism among hat makers, irritability, memory loss, uncontrolled movements. The hatter's tea isn't just eccentric. It's an indictment of industrial poison, catalogued in official inquiries into working conditions. Here's what's truly horrifying. The entertainment of a child's tale masks an epidemic of occupational disease, recorded in factory returns and hospital ledgers. Consider the Cheshire Cat, forever grinning and vanishing, leaving only a smile behind. Children see a magical animal. Historians see disappearance and distancing. The grin is the surface of empire, a smile that erases bodies. Picture London docks in 1842 after the Treaty of Nanking. Ships stack opium bales like dull crates. In quiet smoking rooms, men inhale denatured lives. The caterpillar smoking a hookah pulls on a symbol of an empire addicted to narcotics it forced upon others. British naval records and customs ledgers in the 1840s show the surge in opium imports and the profits reaped from coerced trade. The smile is the Cheshire grin of profit that disappears the human cost in distant fields and flooded rivers. The Queen of Hearts is a caricature, but she is also the magistrate and executioner. Victorian justice is public, loud, and often arbitrary. Public executions continue until 1868. On May 26, 1868, Michael Barrett is hanged outside Newgate Prison, recorded in newspapers and court documents, as the last person to face a crowd in England, before Parliament passed the Capital Punishment Amendment Act that year. Watching a hanging is an afternoon spectacle. The Queen's off with their heads isn't mere flippancy. It's a reflection of a culture where judgment is spectacle, where the law is theater and human beings are props. Court records and execution lists from the era show how normalized state violence is, how casual. Wonderland itself maps onto the upside-down social order of mid-Victorian Britain. The Mad Tea Party is a world where normal rules are nonsensical, but punitive. Look at the Andover workhouse scandal of 1845. Reports by the Poor Law Commissioners in 1846 detail inmates gnawing bones to extract marrow, overseers who sold off the bodies of the weak, and a stench so thick doctors faint. The official inquiry, minutes and depositions preserved in parliamentary papers, reads like a grotesque feast from the Tea Party. Absurd rules, cruelty as routine. The justice system and poor law bureaucracy turned necessity into malice, making institutional grotesquerie a fact of life. Children, women, the disabled. Desks of office clerks recorded them as numbers. The softness of the Alice illustrations belies registers full of names, ages, dates, and costs. Don't miss the pattern as it tightens. The storyteller Dodgson is a man of mathematics and photographs, the camera's glass and chemical baths, toys that, in the same decade, are brought into contact with industrial chemicals. His Oxford is not isolated. Christchurch sits in a city whose newspapers carry headlines about strikes, inquests, and parliamentary debates. On July 4th, 1862, when he invents the tale, Britain is still digesting the Husker inquest. The scandal at Andover is the talk of corridors. The Hatter's sheiks are showing up in hospital wards, and the opium wars have remade commerce. These are not random horrors. They are the architecture of the world into which Alice is dropped. Look closer at the illustrations and language. The trial of the Knave of Hearts. Absurd evidence, nonsensical verdicts, mirrors court transcripts where poverty is treated as guilt. Newspaper reports of trials from the 1850s show judges dismissing valid defense pleas and juries swayed by spectacle. Sentence is carried out, reads one 1855 trial report, as public example. The book's topsy-turvy courtroom is a satire on laws that protect property more fiercely than life. But it gets darker when you track the personal traces. Alice Liddell grows up. Dodgson remains a man with a camera and a secrecy that historians still debate. Diaries, photographic logs, and letters preserved in Christchurch archives lay out dates and sittings. Photographs of 1858, entries in 1862, a manuscript presented November 26, 1864. These documents show an intimacy that is not purely pastoral. It sits uneasily beside the records of a society that commodifies children as labor, treats bodies as industrial waste, and files human life in ledgers. You can close the book and return to the painted Cheshire smile if you like, but the historical documents are stubborn. Inquest transcripts from Husker Pit, July 4th, 1838. Poor Law Commission reports on Andover, 1846. Parliamentary returns and medical papers cataloging erethism among hatters. Court records and newspapers covering Michael Barrett's execution, May 26th, 1868. Dodgson's manuscript gift, November 26th, 1864. These are paper trails that refuse to be fanciful. This collection of evidence reframes Alice not as mere child's play, but as a ledger of industrial-era cruelty disguised in nonsense. The horrors are not isolated episodes, but systems, industry, empire, legal spectacle, and social indifference intertwine. When you read The Mad Hatter, taste mercury under your tongue. When you watch the White Rabbit hurry, hear the factory bell and the coroner's footnotes. When the Queen commands a beheading, remember Newgate's crowd. Once you know the ledger, the story will never be the same. The next time you see that smiling cat, you will sense the vanished faces behind a laughing mouth. When you hear Alice, you hear generations catalogued in official documents, drowning lists, hospital registers, and parliamentary pages. The book was never just nonsense. It was a map drawn in riddles, pointing to how a nation treated its most vulnerable. So the simple final thought is this: the innocent fable you grew up with is a cover for a series of deliberate violences, recorded in dates and ledgers and ink that refuses to fade. Alice was never just a girl in a dress. She is the shape of a country's conscience. And once that conscience is named, you can no longer read the story as innocent.